Heyo, welcome into the CHGO White Sox post-game show, coming to you live from Studio A of our CHGO offices here in the West Loop of Chicago. I'm your host, Sean Anderson. Alongside me, Vinnie Duber, our CHGO White Sox beat writer. You can follow him at Vinnie Duber. You can follow me at Sean_W_Anderson. Unfortunately, Herb has been fired. Very sad. It's so sad. No, congratulations.
You can tell that's not true because I cracked up when you said it.
Unfortunately, it's not true. I guess Herb still works here. Courtney is graduating today, so congratulations to her. And Herb and the family are celebrating today. So hit a thumbs up button for not only Courtney graduating, not only for Sarah producing us today.
Hi.
Hello. The White Sox won a series. They won their second series of 2024. We'll be talking about that. We'll be talking about Garrett Crochet's start today, Brian Ramos' major league debut, and the White Sox also got shut out on Friday. So they still have been shut out more than they've won. So nothing's actually changed, even though, they've won their second series.
Well, hey, when you start off with the kind of hole that they dug for themselves in the month of April, even when good things happen, the big picture is perhaps not as rosy. I was typing up my end of game tweet, and I always include the record, in there, and I'm like, the Sox won. They scored a bunch of runs. Garrett Crochet was excellent. They're 8-26. Like that. Like, I'm not trying to bring anybody down. It's just like that's a thing that it's a long climb back up the mountain. We'll put it that way.
Well, and I was so used to John Schriffen after a win saying Southside stand up, and he didn't say it today. And I don't know if he didn't say it yesterday, but I don't know, it kind of took the wind out of my sails. Like, if it was 7-26, maybe I'd be a little bit more pumped up if I was getting a Southside stand up.
Well, I'll say this, though, too, like, Southside stand up maybe is like, John is a very excited broadcaster when things go well for the White Sox, right? So, this, like I said, is kind of a good, complete, regular, run-of-the-mill win for a baseball team. Maybe not a lot of excitement to be had because it was just matter of fact, oh yeah, they played really well and won. And obviously those days have been few and far between for the White Sox this season, but perhaps John is saving that for some of those Andrew Benintendi walk-off style moments.
All right, we can only hope. And hopefully there's more for John to call coming up in this season. Make sure you hit that thumbs up button. Make sure you're subscribing to our CHGO Sports YouTube channel. Before we get into the White Sox winning their series, Vinny has been teasing me for at least about 2 hours now about some sort of surprise.
I come bearing gift.
Oh.
So you know this, obviously. I'm not sure the listeners do, but it just moved. And so, you have to take stock and inventory of everything you own, even things that have been buried in the closet and you totally forgot you owned them. And I figured this weekend, with the White Sox reuniting with an old friend yesterday, what better time to add to our set decoration collection than with this Lance Lynn bobblehead?
Yes.
So there you are.
Hell yes. I didn't actually know that this existed. I forgot that this is a thing. And this is perfect, especially with him starting on Saturday.
Exactly.
And the White Sox get the win. We'll talk about that sloppy Saturday. Why don't we start with today, though? I'm very excited to get this open.
Open
get
that
the
up.
Big bastard.
I'll talk about Garrett Crochet for a bit.
Oh, yes.
Garrett Crochet was excellent today. Probably, it's the longest start he's had since his second start of the year. And if you're following along like on the game logs and you see that ERA, it is going down, down, down. It was a pencil thin 2.0 after his second start of the season, and now after 6 runs of 1 inning ball, the 5 innings, the shorter game that he pitched last time out was tremendous as well. And so from an ERA going from 2 all the way up to 6.5, basically, after 3 bad ones in a row. Now 2 good ones in a row are bringing it down again. So Garrett Crochet, we thought maybe we saw a turn here in the narrative, right? He started off so great and then giving up runs all of a sudden. Now it's coming back to it. He's showing that he can maybe recover a little bit, and he's recovered to the tune of 2 really, really good starts in a row. This one he didn't have to come out early because he was so efficient in those first couple of innings. Is able to complete 6, and I think that's what he wants to make sure he's doing every time out. Especially, you'll remember what he said last time after that 5-inning start where they pulled him after 77 pitches. He said, boy, on that 0-7 road trip, we burned through the bullpen, and I wanted to go out and make sure that I could help save the bullpen. And because he was done after 5, he wasn't able to really do that. They burned through that bullpen yesterday in that rain delay game, but he made sure that he was able to go 6 today and made sure that they only had to use 3 relievers out of the pen.
Yeah, and then I think you look at April 13th, 19th, and 24th, and you see 5 earned, 7 earned, and 5 earned. But you look back, and it's just kind of a couple mistakes, mainly the homer to Carlos Santana, the homer in that Reds game as well, right? Like if you could just have one pitch back, it might look like completely different starts. I think this is great to see. Maybe Crochet dial back a little bit on the actual stuff and the velocity and just work on focusing getting outs. Like we didn't see a lot of innings where you were seeing 20 pitches in an inning. It was 10, 14, 11. He was extremely efficient today. This was his worst start by stuff plus. So you wonder, is this now what being his 8th start of the year? Is this waning physical stuff from him, or is this him learning how to be a pitcher? I think it's obviously interesting because what's his next start going to look like? I mean, it's really just, can he recover and then be the same guy 5 days from now? Because even though the stuff is diminished, it's still 105 and not 108. I mean, it's like a little bit of a decrease, but he's still efficient in getting through 6 innings.
Well, I think the answer to your question can be both, right? Because one forces the other, right? If it is a physical thing, and I talked to Ethan Katz during the last homestand, and he said they had noticed that Garrett's velocity was dipping 4 or 5 innings into his recent starts. And of course that was after that 5 inning start is when I talked to Ethan about that. So they had seen it not in that one, but in those ones where he was giving up all those runs. And so they were like, we got to keep an eye on that, try to make sure that doesn't happen. Don't believe that happened today. At least I heard Steve Stone commenting that it wasn't happening dramatically, at least, but they have noticed some sort of physical results coming from this, right? And so when that does happen, it forces you to do the other thing, right? And so the guys that we know, the guys that are famous for not throwing 1,000,000 miles an hour, Garrett Crochet is a guy who does throw 1,000,000 miles an hour, relatively speaking, but the famous Greg Maddux, or even somebody who's played here in town of late, Kyle Hendricks, right? Those guys don't have the stuff, but boy, can they pitch. And so you're forced to say at some point, well, if my velocity isn't playing or if my stuff isn't playing, I'm going to make sure that I can pitch and spot this ball and learn how to get guys out, even if the stuff isn't doing it on its own. Garrett Crochet, we might be seeing a microcosm of that, right? Somebody who there is admitted physical, I don't even want to say issues, but I'll just say results happening from him being a starter for the first time in his major league career. Maybe he's going out there and saying, all right, I'm going to learn how to, or I'm going to try to do this in a little different way. And while he did get 6 strikeouts today in 6 innings, he was getting ground balls, he was getting flyouts, and it was an extremely effective outing. I think he only had 3 or 4 guys on base because there's no walks. There were 3 hits, and one of them went out of the park. So really, only 2 guys on base.
Yeah, he was fantastic today. Not much you can really worry about outside of maybe the Lars Nootbaar liner that hit off of him. 91 miles per hour off of his shin foot area. He seemed to be all right. Bounced back, and didn't really have that be too much of a hiccup. That was the first base runner that actually reached in the game as well. So he was cruising so far, and you talked about that velocity dip on that 6th strikeout to Goldie. He gets him on a 99 mile per hour fastball. So hey, no worries there as long as he can reach back and get it. So he throws 88 pitches today, and I think the biggest thing that I took away from this was he wasn't using his changeup as much. We saw on April 24th, he used it 12 times. On April 29th against the Twins, he used it 18 times. Today, he only used it 3 times. So he was mainly 4-seam, slider, and cutter today. I'm not sure if that's because there was a little bit more lefties in the lineup.
I think it's matchup-based, man.
Yeah.
I mean, look at who those 2 starts were against. Not just the last one, but Twins. The one prior was against the Twins. And if memory serves, you saw Eric Fetty dominate the Twins with a real changeup heavy arsenal as well. So it could just be the kind of thing that really works in those matchups, works against a lineup that is either structured like that or just is the Twins, right? So, it's that team has won a bunch of games in a row. It's obviously not bothering them to the point where they're losing, but if they have a little bit of a weakness, why not try to exploit it?
And then the one pitch that he did get hit on was Contreras. It was a 97-mile-per-hour fastball, middle, and he's talked a lot about, trying to avoid those back foot sliders. He threw, I think, like four back foot sliders to righties today, and those have been usually like the Marcell Ozuna, the Carlos Santana ones that have stayed in the middle of the zone and have been taken out. He gets damaged today on a four-seam fastball. Just going back to the stuff, like maybe that's a little bit of a concern. Yes, it's middle, that home run that Contreras hits, but only 3 whiffs on 23 swings for Crochet today on his fastball, 8 whiffs on 42 swings in total, so 19% whiff rate, completely down from where he typically is, but also 17 called strikes, which is huge. I mean, as long as he's being able to locate, that's half the battle there. So 28% called strike plus whiff rate. That's one of his lower ones this year, but, with a major league average being 30%, going 60 innings at 28%, isn't that bad, right? That's picking nits there. So Crochet overall today was fantastic, and then that led to the huge inning for the White Sox. I think 4 straight hits. You had Aloy with a solo homer that made it 2-1. Then DeYoung had a double that drove in Sheets, who had a double. Ramos had his first major league hit, and then Shoemake had a bloop single to make it 4-1, and then Grossman had a sac fly to make it 5-1. All of that coming in the 7th inning. The White Sox finally getting runs. I'll take that. I mean, there was some runs on Saturday, but again, the shutout on Friday sticking, I think, mostly out for the Sox fans.
I think the thing that really jumped out about what they were able to do today from an offensive standpoint was stringing hits together. I mean, there's been so many times where it's been, all right, they got a leadoff double, and that guy stays at second base or at least doesn't score. Being able to produce a rally, to produce a one of those Bugs Bunny cartoon type move the line type things, that is something that we have not seen from this offense. And I think while the offense in general has come back a little bit from the doesn't score at all days of the first few weeks of the season, they're still not lining up. They're not syncing up where it's like, you mentioned yesterday even they scored 6 runs. That was barely enough yesterday. There are going to be days when that is a blowout. Like today, it seemed like it was a pretty easy game once they obviously scored those 4 in the 7th inning. So stringing those hits together, that's how you put up a crooked number. This is not me breaking any sort of news or anything like that, but it's something that the White Sox haven't done with consistency. And if they can start doing it, then those shutout or 1-run games every single day like we saw in the early days of April, that's going to be history, because that's how you mount a challenge against the Major League Baseball team. And you saw what they did to the pitcher. They just brought in a brand new pitcher in that 7th inning, did St. Louis, and the Sox knock him out of the game in 3 or 4 hitters because they're just banging it off of him. That makes it very easy to get that snowball building down the mountainside.
Absolutely. It was great to see.
I'm using mountain cliches a lot right now.
Are you planning a mountain trip soon?
I mean, not very tall mountains, but okay. Yeah.
More like hills?
Going to Arkansas. They have mountains. Those are mountains. That counts.
They do?
Yeah, they're the Ozark Mountains. Huh. Yeah.
I thought that was
they're not like the Rockies. They're not spectacular or anything like that, but they look nice.
I thought the Ozarks were more Dakota.
No? Arkansas and Missouri.
Missouri. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. You going to talk about to Dominic Fletcher and Benintendi about your trip?
Already did.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Any good tips?
Some tips, yeah.
Go get
File them away.
Go get barbecue.
I'll be getting barbecue, no doubt.
I mainly want to bring up the offense, though, because with Herb not being here, we have to talk about Click to Pick. We did have Nate, our Discord member, picking with us this week. We will have a new member on Monday, so if you are looking to become a diehard, check out allchgo.com, become a diehard today, and you can join the Discord, and then you could join the selection process to be the diehard that plays this week. Nate today was leading us with 7 points. Nate was leading with 7 points. Vinny also had 7 points, and then I had 5 points. Herb didn't have a single point. I end up going with Eloy Jimenez. Since that's the game-winning run, do I get the victory this week?
Well, and it was a home run.
Right.
I think Nate was close. Nate picked Brian Ramos, and I think there's a case to be made there. He had an RBI, a run scored, and his first major league hit. But I think Eloy sending one over the fence gets it for you, and you get the comeback win.
I don't want to speak for
Gavin
Herb.
Sheets had a good game, too.
Gavin Sheets did have a good game.
But I think the home run clinches it.
I could hear it with the Ramos one, mainly just because he had 2 RBI. Also scored
1 RBI, I think. His single moved DeYoung to third.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah. Maybe Eloy then. I don't know.
I'd give it to Eloy.
I'm not the judge.
The czar?
Here. Yeah, that's Herb's job. I won't step over him. So maybe it's Nate. We'll see.
Stay tuned for tomorrow's show. Herb will have an official ruling on this.
Waiting with bated breath. All right, let's take a break and then we'll talk about Brian Ramos and his major league debut. We want to let you know though about pork. Who doesn't love to wake up and eat some pork? It's a part of my balanced, lovely breakfast. 2 pieces of bacon. Why not? With a piece of toast, rub some butter on there. You get a clove of garlic. You crack
this is
that
balanced.
clove. Yeah, hell yeah. And then you kind of like grate the garlic on the toast. It's very nice. And then 2 hard-boiled eggs. Boom. There you go. That's a balanced breakfast.
Do you have the thing? Do you notice when and if you're watching like a commercial for like a cereal or whatever, or you're watching a something that talks about a balanced breakfast, they always have the little vase with the little flour in it. Do you have that on the table too?
Of course I do.
Okay, good job.
Of course. And it's one singular flour, right? Yeah, I don't have a bunch
freshly
of flowers.
Picked.
Yeah, absolutely. I also have a half of a grapefruit.
Citrus.
Of course, I don't actually. But it's grilling season, so get your pork on, whether you're eating it at breakfast, lunch. Maybe you're trying some ham. I had some ham for lunch today. Maybe you're having a nice roast like it's showing you there in the advertisement there. It's grilling season, so get your pork on. Go support Illinois pork producers. So by elevating your pork protein game with lean pork, a powerhouse of natural goodness, you could savor the flavor, savor the gains, and celebrate any occasion by enjoying the best pork produced by Illinois pig farmers. From your sausage and bacon from breakfast to pulled pork to juicy chops hot off the grill, it's an entire season dedicated to pork and the people behind the product, paid for by the Illinois pork producers. Generations of commitment. We also want to let you know about our friends over at Prize Picks. I've put together a little play tonight. There's some Sunday night baseball. You got the San Francisco Giants taking on the Philadelphia Phillies. I got a 2-pick prize pick for you. You can pick from 2 to 6 player stat projections in your prize pick. I'm going Kyle Schwarber over a half total base and then under a half first inning runs by Logan Webb and Taijuan Walker. So Kyle Schwarber's going to get on base, and then there's going to be no first inning runs by either the Giants or the Phillies. That's my play right there.
All right.
10 to win 25. Why not? But go check out our friends over at Prize Picks. They're the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. They're the easiest and most exciting way to play DFS. It's just you against the numbers. Instead of adding like thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, you pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. With baseball season officially underway, go over to Prize Picks and check out the great baseball action they have for you. You can add your favorite players from the diamond to your Prize Pick lineups all season long, whether it's strikeouts, RBIs, or first inning runs. Take your pick of more than or less than and add them to your Prize Picks lineup today. It takes less than 60 seconds to get an entry submitted on Prize Picks as well. So if you're just about to watch the game, you're just about to sit down, you're hearing the Sunday night baseball charm, the doo-doo-doo-doo-doo, is that still the charm?
I think so.
Or is that baseball tonight? You'll
the same thing.
Go check out Prize Picks. So check out prizepicks.com/CHGO and use code CHGO for a first deposit match up to $100. That's prizepicks.com/CHGO and use code CHGO. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. Danny Mendick had a back issue that forced him to hit the IL, and during Friday night's Birmingham Barons game in the 5th inning, Brian Ramos is taken off the field, not told why, and has to wait 5 innings for the game to conclude. A Terrell Tatum walk-off finally leads to Brian Ramos celebrating with his teammates, and then they celebrate with him because he gets called up to the major leagues. He appears in Saturday's game in the 9th inning as a defensive replacement, and then he makes his first start today. Where do you want to start with Ramos? Do you just want to start today, his sac fly, and his first plate appearance? Do you want to start with the hit, or maybe just this kind of, hey, could you imagine being 22 years old, hitting a $174 and then getting the call up?
Yeah, I mean, let's start with him just getting here to the major league level, right? I mean, this is a guy who I think is here because he's on the 40-man roster. It's an easy move for the White Sox to make, but let's not pretend that he's not part of the future. I think that at the moment he's, as we talked with Elijah Evans last week, like he's maybe not at the level of Colson Montgomery and or even Edgar Caro in terms of, hey, those guys you can lock into their position of the future, so to speak. Who we'll see if Brian Ramos ends up taking that third base job, which we are all kind of assuming will be open next year with the team option with Yoan Moncada, getting very expensive. So I think Ramos probably has a shot at that job, but I don't think he's here because, hey, it's your time to shine as a major leaguer. Obviously, called up from AA, not even making it to the AAA level yet. We saw this last year with Popeye Rodriguez, right, where there was just a need on an immediate need at the big league level to have a body that could play the infield. They called up Rodriguez from AA, and I don't think he even got to hit. I think he was here for a week, if that, and was basically like, all right, we just need you here in case something happens. He went right back down. He did go back down to AAA, I believe, so it was kind of like a way of promoting him. We'll see if that's what happens with Ramos. But good for Brian Ramos to get in the game today and get a start on a getaway day and make the most of it. He gets an RBI in his first Major League plate appearance, and he gets a base hit later on in the game as well. So really a very nice day for him in terms of his career. This is not, though, going to be, or it shouldn't rather be, the last that we see of Brian Ramos, even if he doesn't play a lot or get a lot more opportunities like this. He's likely to go back down once Danny Mendick comes back off the injured list, or something else happens to get the White Sox another infielder. But good for him for taking advantage of this. It's maybe not the traditional situation you think of in terms of a call-up, right? You think, all right, this guy's killing it in the minor leagues, bring him on up and see what he can do. But seeing what he can do is part of the White Sox plan for the long term, and we should probably be talking a lot about him, if not by the end of this season, come spring training next year, because he might be one of the favorites to win an everyday job on that infield.
I think it's probably most surprising that he's up before Colson Montgomery. I think if you asked me, or if we asked Elijah on Thursday, hey, who would you more likely expect to be in the majors, this year, Colson or Brian Ramos? I would have said Colson. So it is surprising to see Ramos get the call already.
Ramos is on the 40-man. Colson is not.
Oh, that's true. I didn't think about that. Well, there you go. That's literally what it comes down to. It's just a 40-man thing. I mean, it's nothing about Ramos's play. It's nothing about where Ramos is as a major leaguer or hitter. It is strictly just the White Sox being constrained to 40-man spots, basically. Yeah.
Doesn't mean, but it doesn't mean he's not a guy worth paying attention to. You know what I mean? Like, no. I think White Sox fans should be much more excited about seeing him here now, even knowing the circumstances, than they would about an actual shot that was given to a guy like Lenyn Sosa, who just doesn't seem to have the oomph as a prospect that Ramos could end up having.
Yeah, I think the most frustrating thing, though, is just he's still not ready, and then it's more that he's traveling from Birmingham to St. Louis on Saturday. He's not actually starting on Saturday. And Pedro said that he's going to get 8 to 10 days to show what he can do. It's just like they're going through a lot of attrition right now, and it's frustrating that Ramos is getting forced up to get this advanced assignment and not having Ortega or Phillips or Mike Moustakas, right? There isn't really a guy to call up if a Danny Mendick
It's already happened. It was Danny Mendick.
Right,
Yeah.
Exactly.
I guess it could be Zach Remillard, but he's not on the 40-man.
Right. And they would have to make another move where, either Leon's getting cut off, and they've kind of trimmed the fat of the 40-man already with the Yosemar Cruzin cutoff, the Sammy Peralta cutoff, Alex Spees cutoff. I mean, you brought up Popeye Rodriguez. I mean, there's been a lot of churn with this 40-man already. I guess that's the most frustrating part, is it's not because the White Sox deemed him ready. It's because the White Sox really didn't have another choice. And that's right. It's frustrating in a way.
I think we've heard Pedro say this. You've heard other managers say it. It's not just a Pedroism, but I think there's some truth to, hey, this kid gets to see what life's like at the major league level, and maybe it does something to his drive. Maybe it does something to his mindset to say either A, boy, I really want to get back there, or B, hey, I can make it here. Like I'm not. It's not like I don't belong. I can come up to the major league level and get a hit off of a major league pitcher. I can come up to the major league level and help a major league team win a baseball game. there's that's got to be a boost mentally, I would imagine, at least emotionally, to just be excited for a day, to get a really cool opportunity. I'm not saying that is what was preventing him from having a fast start this year down in the minors or anything like that. His talent and the White Sox development of that talent is obviously going to determine at the end of the day what his long-term career looks like. But this might end up being a positive thing. Hey, I got to go up to the major leagues for a day, and boy, that really had me going for the next rest of the season, versus, boy, that really screwed me up because I wish I would have been able to go in the straight line that everybody goes to. So I don't think even the point that you're making is all negative necessarily. I think there could be some silver lining to that.
Absolutely, because I think the Sox are probably communicating this with Brian. I mean, hey, we know that this might be a little bit advanced, but we're going to get your feet wet, and this isn't really anything where you're supposed to have high expectations and go out and kill it. We want you to have fun, play smart baseball, but as long as you're, making routine plays, which kind of didn't in his first chance on Saturday. It's the growing mistakes. You're going to be all right. And hey, no one's talking about this, and maybe we should start talking about this. Brian Ramos and the Birmingham Barons were 18-7, and then he gets called up, and now the Sox are 2-0. Is it the Brian Ramos effect?
It's just the Birmingham pixie dust effect. Everything that team touches right now is magic, it seems like. So maybe they'll just keep calling up AA guys, and they'll be like, just keep winning. Keep bringing them up from Birmingham.
Brooks Baldwin, you're next. Hit that thumbs up button, like Shirtless Wonder is saying. Vinny talking about the mountains, thinking about the Leinenkugel sister beer, Coors Light. So there you go. I think we got some Coors Light stuff
over your shoulder there.
I know our studio. But yeah, hit that thumbs up button if you haven't. Make sure you're subscribing to the CHGO Sports YouTube channel. Ramos is exciting. We'll see what truly unfolds with his play up here in Major League Baseball. But it's another 44. We named some 44s earlier. I don't know if it's going to be a long line. I don't even know if this is going to be his major league number. I mean, maybe, this is like an Aaron Rowan who he only wears 44 for a little bit.
Only for a little while,
I don't know. You brought up Corky Miller, brought up Bruce Rondon, you brought up Justin Morneau, Toby Hall, Billy Koch. I know there's actually some good players that
some
won
fun names there.
But,
I mean, Jake Peavy went to an All-Star. Jake Peavy and Adam Dunn both went to the All-Star game with the White Sox. So
people like Dan Pasqua. So,
people do like Dan Pasqua.
I don't know.
He's really stuck in the collective consciousness for a long time.
He's like my Orlando Cabrera. Okay. That's unfair to Dan Pasqua. He had a long career with the White Sox. Anyways, let's take a break. We'll talk a little bit about who's coming up for the White Sox for this Rays series. We will also talk about, I don't know.
Some other stuff.
We'll tell you about some sponsors first. Let's let you know about our friends over at Game Time. If you are looking to join a White Sox game, maybe you are in St. Louis. I know my pal Alec, who's usually in the chat, said that he just went to the game today down in St. Louis. John Triffin showed all the Sox fans that are showing up in Sox gear in St. Louis.
It's an easy drive. If you're like a downstate Sox fan, it's probably easier to get to St. Louis than it is to get to the South Side.
Right. And hey, maybe you were a fan of the White Sox in 1986. You thought that they'd be coming to Tampa, and now you finally get the chance to see your White Sox in Tampa this weekend. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch, and with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seats, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball tickets, and the best part is they offer the Game Time guarantee. They have the lowest price guarantee, event cancellation protection, job loss protection, but also if you find tickets in the same row and section for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. So if you see a deal that's good enough for you, go and spring on it and splurge on it on Game Time, and then you can go and check out, hey, I didn't actually get the best deal. You can reach out to Game Time Service, and their support will get you the difference, 110% of the difference, as quick as possible. Herb did this down in Atlanta in less than 12 minutes. He got 110% of the difference. So take out the guesswork of buying Major League Baseball tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CHGO for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CHGO for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
We're doing some great stuff over here at CHGO. If you subscribe to our social channels like I do, you see all the fun that was had during the CHGO Bears draft party, or when Cody and Greg get everybody over in the bleachers there at Wrigley Field. It's a lot of fun that we're having over here, and we want you guys to all be able to be a part of it. You know that we've got Sox show every day for you. You probably know we got the Bears and the Cubs and the Bulls and the Hawks shows every day for you, but there's so much more you can do. You can go on over to allchgo.com and become a diehard. You can learn more about that Friday 120 club that they got over on the north side. Sox takeovers. We got 3 of them coming up this season. One of them is this month.
The 27th.
This very month, on Memorial Day, you can go see him play the Toronto Blue Jays.
He is.
And then, of course, more against the Dodgers and the Cubs throughout the season. And there's something in here written about golf tourneys. Oh, boy. How about that?
You excited? I didn't go to the last one.
I drove around in a golf cart all day, and it was very fun.
You didn't golf?
No, I'm not a golfer. But I am a driver of recreational vehicles, and that was fun. Me and Greg Boyson were just tooling all over the place. But guys, also, we got the premium written content for our members at allchgo.com. That includes, of course, the White Sox weekly newsletter that will be hitting inboxes tomorrow morning. 20% off of events. You get merch for all your favorite teams and a free shirt when you become a member. And on top of it all, Sean, you mentioned this earlier. You can be in this part of the CHGO Lounge, our members-only Discord, where, of course, Herb is giving one lucky diehard a new chance every week to click to pick against us. So, guys, it's a lot of great stuff. We want you to be a part of it. AllCHGO.com. Figure out how you can become a diehard today.
All right. So I did get a little lost there. I know where we're going, though. I did have a couple more things on Brian Ramos that I did want to bring up. One of them being James Fox's point. When the Sox were in the penalty box internationally after signing Luis Robert, they landed Cuban third baseman Brian Ramos in 2018 for just $300K. He's in the lineup today. So just showing that even when they were able to go out and get superstars, they were able to use that international money to their benefit and still get a player that is contributing to this White Sox team in 2024. We talked a lot about Marco Patti and his contribution to the White Sox, and this is just another Cuban in this pipeline. We're seeing Ramos come through, and I did see this in his second at-bat. Sarah, I sent this in Slack if you do want to bring this up. I don't know if it's White Sox brain rot or not. Oh, no, it's a new one in Slack. I'm so sorry. I just sent a link in Twitter. I don't know if it's White Sox brain rot. My head always going to a different White Sox to compare new White Sox to, but I compared him to ALLCITY on the X, and you can kind of see it in the stances. That's on ALLCITY's game-tying homer that made it 6-6 against Detroit, I believe. And what pitcher's throwing a 65-mile-per-hour pitch is, I think, the biggest question that ALLCITY takes.
Sarah, go ahead and click
but yeah,
each
if you
one
want
of
to
those
click
pictures.
Brian Ramos.
There you go.
Ramos is a little bit more upright, and he's obviously thicker playing third base than ALLCITY is. And if you want to go over to ALLCITY, ALLCITY a little bit more hunched over in the back, but still that upright nature, and he's just got such a quick turn, Ramos does, in his stance. Being 22, you could just see so much athleticism in his stance. It's just about refinement. I know I was going to call Paul Janish. Paul Janish said there's not much to worry about because it's mainly April, and this kid is a guy that has shown so much already before being a 22-year-old and before 2024 that there's not much worry. So maybe it's even good, too. I know you brought this up. Maybe it's good to just get away from Birmingham where he's struggling. He gets, a fresh set of eyes on Major League Baseball, and he's able to go back down and, produce well, and we see him back in August or September, because that's what you're hoping for, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly not out of the realm of possibility that he could make his way up. I think, I don't think the plan was for him to be at Birmingham all year long, perhaps, especially when you've got kind of this need coming at third base as soon as this time next year, we'll say, even earlier. But it's something where this is a guy who's very well thought of, very well regarded. It's about the development. Can they hit on it? You brought up that he wasn't necessarily this top of the line guy, right? That he wasn't necessarily to make the comparison to the American players. He wasn't a first round draft pick, so to speak, right? Or he wasn't a guy who got the Luis Robert Jr. kind of money or the Yoan Moncada kind of money coming out of Cuba. But it's about player development. And if you can develop these guys, you got to hit on as many of these as possible. And there are those obvious success stories, like a guy like Mark Burley who isn't picked very high in the draft. Maybe this can be the success story of a guy who wasn't the highest, the number one prospect in that class or anything like that, but a guy that they were able to get their hands on, get into their system, and boy, did it play out. So a long way to go, obviously, but he is somebody who I think we can start talking about as maybe being a potential future piece. Get him up here right now and see what the Major League coaches think of him, see what the Major League front office thinks of him, watching him in person every single night. He could go back down to AA or AAA, whatever it might be, with some tips from the guys that are working up at Chicago and saying, this is what I'm going to apply to AA or AAA hitting from here on out.
Yeah, and we're wishing the best for Ramos. We'll see how his career develops, and we should see him a decent amount in Tampa Bay. There's no rush to get him off the roster. We should see him for the next 3 games. Okay, before we head to Tampa and talk about those games and the rotation or projected rotation for those next 3 games for the Sox, let's talk a little bit about Saturday, that sloppy game. The Sox went 6-5 in 10. Just hilarious to see John Brebbia try to get a dry ball and try to get a ball that's
begging the umpire to let the game continue to go.
And then Tanner Banks coming out and getting bailed out by C.B. Buckner on a pitch that was not a strike, but it was called a strike, and the Sox get the win. Was there anything that you took away from that game or Friday's game that before we move on from this series?
Yeah, I mean, I saw the end of that game yesterday, or at least the period before the rain delay, I should say. And I think that the thing that stood out to me was Brian Ramos and the fact that he made a bad play in the field. He makes you've got Goldschmidt on second as the free runner in the inning, and then there's a single by Arenado that puts runners at the corners with nobody out. And drawn in infield, Ramos is at third base. You get a hard hit ground ball right to him, and he goes home. And you're like, well, at least they'll get an out with Goldschmidt. They'll prevent that lead runner from scoring, and the throw is low, and Corey Lee can't handle it, and they don't even get him in a rundown, or they don't, there's not even a play. Goldschmidt just goes back to third base, and all of a sudden the bases are loaded with nobody out. And it was at that point when I was thinking to myself, well, the law of averages would say that this is probably going to be a good thing for St. Louis. Didn't end up working out that way. Mother Nature helped. The home plate umpire helped. Tanner Banks helped, but it was about to be a very negative moment for Brian Ramos and his first taste of Major League Baseball. Probably good for the kid that it ended the way it did, and that he's able to go out and have a very positive moment today.
And also in that game, Dominic Leone left with back tightness, so he's day-to-day. I don't know if that's going to affect the later moves for the White Sox pitchers, but it was a pretty banged-up bullpen. And again, we talked a little bit about Crochet going 6 innings. I think that was huge today because there was that moment where he gets hit with the Nootbaar line drive, and you're like, uh-oh, is this not going to go well? The first pitch that he threw warm-up-wise completely missed the catcher, but it seemed like he locked in, and that was big for Crochet to push through that deflection there. All right, the one thing that I want to bring up negatively on this series, even though the Sox did win this series, they get their second series win. They have been shut out more times than they have won games. They've been shut out 9 times now, 7 times to begin the series as well. So losing 3-0 on Friday, that was their 7th time being shut out to start a series this year. They've been outscored 61-13 in game 1s this year, and only the 1907 Brooklyn Superbas, I think Jerry Reinsdorf's first jersey, have been...
he's a big Dodgers guy, come on.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I saw Brooklyn. Have been shut out more in the first 32 games. So only the 1907 Brooklyn Superbas have been shut out more in their first 32 games. I think the worry about getting shut out should be less and less just because Aloy is back and Tommy Pham's there. And it seems like Vaughn's having some better at-bats and Gavin Sheets is going the other way. Like, it does feel a lot better, the lineup.
Gavin Sheets
from
is just,
where it was.
Gavin Sheets is just running into doubles left and right. Yeah, that's correct. And you're describing that the whole lineup has kind of bounced back a little bit. I certainly don't think that you'd look at this lineup and call it a juggernaut by any stretch. But as I was mentioning earlier in the show, they are kind of out of the woods a little in terms of that stretch of weeks to open the season where they just weren't scoring at all. And I think now that has kind of gone out the window a little bit. Teams are going to get shut out. Mm-hmm. teams are not supposed to get shut out this frequently in the beginning of the season, but it's because those first 3 or 4 weeks of the year were so bad for the White Sox that these numbers are kind of still lingering. I mean, if I would have told you that they would have scored 11 runs in 2 games, at the beginning of April, you would have laughed because that's how poorly that they were hitting. But yeah, getting Eloy in there, having Sheets stay hot. Tommy Pham has been really good since he came over here. All that stuff that you just said is allowing that offense to be a little bit more productive. And so I don't think, that it's going to be a thing where you're going in expecting them to only score 0 or 1 run every night. Now, again, does that mean it's not going to happen? Of course not. The lineup is still not very fearsome. I don't think that you should expect them to hang a 5 or a 6 every single night. But, you're right. This offense seems a lot more capable than it was even 2-3 weeks ago.
Yeah, and I know whenever Martin Maldonado is in the lineup, it's mostly an easy out, but he's providing that veteran leadership, that old veteran steady presence.
It doesn't get you any runs, but it's good.
Nope. 105 batting average, but it's something. All right. Let's go into some minor league stuff, and then we will move to the Monday game with Tampa. I want to start first with AAA. The AAA Charlotte Knights lost on Friday. They lost on Saturday, and they lost on Sunday. So since we've last talked about the Charlotte Knights, they haven't won a game. But we did talk about Coulson on Thursday. Paul Janisch saying there's not much to worry about. And today, 1 for 3 with a homer, 105 miles per hour off the bat as well on that home run. And he had 2 walks on Sunday. Then with the AA team, they won on Friday and they won on Saturday. Their game was still going on today. Actually, their game starts at 5 p.m., so it's going to start in about 20 minutes. Drew Thorpe starts tonight for the Birmingham Barons.
The Torpedo.
Yeah?
Huh?
Torpedo?
Well, I'm stealing that from that swimmer, that Australian swimmer, Ian Thorpe, the Torpedo.
Oh,
yeah.
All right, I like it. I like the.
So I didn't come up with it.
The swimming influence.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, let's go with it. The Torpedo starts tonight at 5 p.m. Obviously, Brian Ramos has been called up, and we talked a little bit about Wilfred Ramos with our guy Elijah Evans on Thursday. He hit a homer on Friday, and one thing to watch out: the 9th hitter for Birmingham. We've talked about how good Birmingham has been. Duke Ellis is batting 9th for the Barons. He's got a .417 on-base percentage and 20 stolen bases already. So he's a guy that is a center fielder, obviously speedy guy to watch out for, maybe to make the team later on this year. And then at Advanced Day, they won on Friday, lost on Saturday, and I believe they ended up losing today. The biggest thing, though, from that team, Noah Schultz made his start. He's starting every Saturday for the Winston-Salem Dash. He went 3 1/3 innings pitched, allowing 2 hits, 2 runs, 1 of them earned, 1 walk, and 6 strikeouts. He does have a .419 ERA, which I know some people are a little concerned about, but when he has a 15.4 K per 9 to a 2.8 walk per 9, I don't think that's too much to worry about. And then Future Sox also noticing he hit his pitch limit, so that's why he only went 3 1/3, and he allowed 2 singles that were bookended by a line out, and then both runs were scored on wild pitches. So it's not like he was getting knocked around and, solved. It was more, sloppy play.
He threw those wild pitches too, I would imagine.
Yeah, that's true. But also, it's so wild that nobody can catch him. They're just so dominant. There's some behind the plate footage from Baseball America that it is truly sickening. Like there was one that it was labeled as a pitch with a lot of horizontal movement, and you're just not sure if it's a slider or a cutter. And then you see the same pitch in the same location that is his slider, and you're like, oh, wow, no, that's the slider. So it's just like a cutter that has, sits like 93 with a ton of movement, and then a slider that has a massive ton of movement at 81. So he's just been extremely impressive so far.
Easy to pick which day you're going to go see the Dash play if you live in Winston-Salem. Right?
Absolutely. I'm tempted to go to Bowling Green. It's not that far. It's only 8 hours. And then finally in Low A, I think this is going to be mainly the guy that I keep updating you on. On Friday, they won, and then they lost today and yesterday. But Riku Nishida, 4 for 7 this weekend with 2 walks. So he is just the leadoff extraordinaire. His OPS is under .700 still for some way or reason, but his on-base percentage is just next level. I think it's still like 375.
With no slug.
With no slug. I mean, it is just extreme Stephen Kwan. But yeah, no, good stuff from the minor leagues.
I think what jumps out there for Colson has got to be the day with the 2 walks, right? I mean, this is a guy who had an on-base percentage over 400 last year. Obviously, only played in, 60-some games, but this year it was down at about 320, just last week. So I'm sure it's up after the weekend. It sounds like he had a good weekend. But if he wants to continue what at least leapt off the stat sheet for me, which was a gigantic on-base percentage, continuing to improve that by taking your walks, that's a good sign.
Yep. So good job, Colson. Keep it up. Maybe we'll see him coming soon. Okay. I have nothing else on St. Louis. I have nothing else on the minor leagues. There was the funny quote from James Fegan where Pedro said during the 3-hour delay, Pedro said, in that 3 hours and 3-minute delay, they stayed focused. And then James also providing a quote from Tanner Banks who said, I ended up taking a nap. Can't stay locked in for a couple of hours. Upcoming on the 6th, 7th, and 8th, the White Sox are going to be heading to Tampa. And as Daryl Van Schouwen said on Twitter, Mike Clevenger will be making the start on the 6th. So Clevenger on Monday, and then assuming Soroka and Flexen on Wednesday, or on Tuesday and Wednesday. We've expected Clevenger. What do you think the corresponding move is? Leon day-to-day. Schuster obviously has been around, and he's still up in the bullpen. I think that probably makes the most sense.
It probably makes the most sense. He is a lefty. Schuster is a lefty, so if there's any interest in keeping the lefty there for long relief, I guess I could see them doing that and maybe moving Brad Keller back down. But they seem to like Brad Keller being here so at the major league level. So I think it probably would be Schuster unless there's an injury that needs to be dealt with. But we'll see how it plays out, and we'll see how they line up in the other 2 games. But Clevenger tomorrow I think is going to be a big headline, maybe the headline of the week for the White Sox. Obviously, you've got Cleveland coming to town at the end of the week, and they're very good. So that could provide some interest, of course, over the weekend. But this is a guy who they have now signed to become, one of their top 2 or 3 starters probably. At least that's their hope, I would imagine. We're going to see what he can do for several months, and if everything goes according to what you think the plan would be, they'd be able to trade him for something that could help them in a little bit longer term. But remember, no matter what you might think of Mike Clevenger, the White Sox front office and coaching staff and players all thought he was an excellent clubhouse presence last year, so he's here for those reasons as well, so the team has stated. But I would imagine that trying to get something for him at the trade deadline is probably priority number 1.
And I did think it was too early for trades, but then the Marlins and Padres said, nope, we're trading Luis Arraez. So, hey, maybe if Tommy Pham really lights it up by the end of May, maybe he can get shipped off the team. If Mike Clevenger goes out there and pulls a Johnny Vandermeer, maybe he's traded. I don't know.
remember when the Twins traded Luis Arraez, and we were and our reaction was like, what's happening? Why are they doing this? I'm sorry to the Twins because compared to this Marlins trade, that looked like, as good of a trade you could possibly make. I don't know what the Marlins are doing, trading their best hitter for 2 single A players.
Well, trading their best hitter or trading their best pitcher for their best hitter, and then trading that best hitter for nobody.
Right. It's some real classic Marlins moves.
Yes.
Like this is like deconstructing World Series teams Marlins style trade right now. Except this team is real bad.
It's funny that the Marlins made the playoffs last year. And they
did
quicker to tear down that team than the White Sox were to tear down their 2021 AL Central division winning team.
I don't know what the Marlins are doing, man.
I don't know what, but that also makes me wonder what the White Sox are doing. This is a big couple series coming up for the White Sox, though. Not only is it 4 games against Cleveland, which I think are always just important because it's divisional. Overall, I think they're still 2-18 against the AL Central, so any wins against the division would be welcomed. But you already have a series win against Tampa, so here's another one where you could possibly get out in front of a team and take advantage of. You have 4 games against Cleveland and then 3 games against Washington. These are teams that are, I think, beatable. I know Cleveland has a really good record, but we just saw the White Sox go to Cleveland, and it wasn't like it was the most lopsided series. The White Sox had a win in that game and then had an extra inning loss that Brian Shaw blew. But with Tampa, Cleveland, and Washington, this is the time I think that you got to jump all over this schedule, because then you got New York, Toronto, Baltimore, Toronto, Milwaukee, the Cubs, Boston, Seattle, Arizona, Houston, etc. The Dodgers in there as well.
As we pointed out at the top of the show, the White Sox still have 8 wins.
Yes.
So it does not matter what part of the schedule they're in. They need to jump all over everybody if they have any designs on being anything better than what they are currently, which is one of the worst teams in baseball from a record standpoint. So, I understand that it's early. I think I'm the one who has spent the last 2 years on this show reminding folks where the calendar is right now. But the White Sox are 18 games under 500 right now. Is anybody talking about them getting back in this? Is anybody talking about them trying to make a run at a playoff spot? If you are, then it don't matter who is standing across the field. You have to go out and win every single game you play.
I thought there was an interesting discussion on Friday on 670 The Score between Josh Nelson and Bernstein and Holmes, where they ended up talking about a shadowy figure with the Chicago White Sox. And I know that this guy has been removed from the managerial position for a while, but he's still around the organization. And the Cardinals broadcast saw him and put a camera on him up in the booth earlier today. So what do we make of Tony La Russa being around the White Sox and making a trip with the team? Is that odd to you? Is it mainly just because it's St. Louis that you think he's there? Like, why is Tony La Russa around the White Sox team right now?
Well, they're in St. Louis, and did they have him out on the field at any point during this weekend? Did they honor him in some way? I'm not sure. Obviously, if he's a beloved figure down there, and so it would make sense that they would do something like that. If they were having some sort of first pitch or something like that. But even if they weren't, listen, we talked about it when he was the manager in 2022. Tony La Russa maybe just doesn't love baseball. He might be addicted to baseball, and I think that when that is your thing and you've been given a role with a team, you're going to make the most of it. You're going to go watch every game. You're going to see every game. If you'll remember before, there was that almost decade-long period where he was not between his managerial stints with St. Louis and the White Sox, he was constantly part of a front office. And not just when he was running the front office in Arizona, but after that, both Boston and with the Angels, he was an advisor of sorts right in the front office. And he was doing that same thing, going around and watching the players and giving his 2 cents. Listen, I know White Sox fans or a chunk of White Sox fans have a very strong opinion about Tony La Russa, but he's a resource for this team. He's part of the front office. He is not the front office, though. He is in this advisory role, and some guys like making trips, some guys don't. Some guys, want to maybe spend a weekend at home watching their kids' Little League game or something. And some guys are like, I love Major League Baseball. Keep me around Major League Baseball as much as you possibly can. I think Tony certainly falls into the latter category.
I just think of some of the articles that you've wrote recently, and, we question the idea of adding Tommy Pham, Brad Keller, Rafael Ortega to this team and the veteran presence. Is that the sign of maybe an older voice with the team having influence and saying we need more veterans into this clubhouse, especially too, if Pedro Grifol is into a position where he is let go as manager of the White Sox? I guess my question is, does Tony La Russa step back into that? Is it for sure Charlie Montoyo's job? Like, the thought process when he left was that he needed to get better. And I just don't know.
And he did.
I don't know if Tony has gotten better enough to return.
I would be stone cold shocked if he were to if that were to happen. Listen, at the end of the day, right? Chris Getz has assembled a brain trust around him that we talked an awful lot about last year and talked an awful lot about in the offseason. And from my eyes being on Chris Getz and the people he's talking to when he's at the ballpark, out in view, the people he is spotted with at the winter meetings and the GM meetings that I was with, he's very much leaning on Josh Barfield and Gene Watson and Brian Bannister, right? Tony La Russa is there most likely because he's best friends with the owner of the team. I'm not saying that he doesn't provide anything, because I think he absolutely does.
Yep.
The guy's been in baseball for decades. He's won more than basically anybody who's ever done that job. Why wouldn't you want to have that resource? I get that argument. But also, it's who you know sometimes, right? And absolutely. I think that to have, at the end of the day, Jerry can hire who he wants. It's his team, and he decided to hire his best friend not only to manage the team, but now to be an advisor as well.
I think your point about when he's brought up, Tony, it's mostly, Pedro saying, oh, he's been a great help for me to rely on when it comes to, talking him through managerial decisions. But you're right, when it comes to personnel, we have not heard Chris Getz invoke the name Tony La Russa. It's been Bannister, Barfield, Gene Watson, right? So I think that's at least the one thing that makes me not go full conspiracy brain here. Maybe it's possible, and I think it's weird that he's making the trip, but it's not like he's just making a trip to Tampa and like Cleveland. He's taking a trip to St. Louis, so there's probably some pregame festivities. I didn't see any on Twitter.
Or even maybe just wants to see some friends.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Anyways, that's going to do it for the CHGO White Sox podcast, covering the second series win for the Chicago White Sox in 2024. We will be back tomorrow. We got a pregame show. The game starts at 5:50, so I believe that show will start around 5:15, 5:20 or so. So join us for that.
5:50. What a weird start time.
Very weird. That's Vinnie Duber. You can follow him at Vinnie Duber. He's our CHGO White Sox beat writer. I'm Sean Anderson. You can follow me at Sean_W_Anderson. You can follow the show at CHGO_White Sox. Thank you to Sarah for producing the show. And make sure you hit that thumbs up button on your way out. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Goodbye.
We all silly like the mayor.